Hello and welcome back. Our travels into the unknown have taken us to desolate islands and the frozen peaks of mountains. But tonight, we venture out onto the lonely open ocean. We're boarding a vessel that has become a legend, a ship that stands as the ultimate symbol of maritime mystery. Its name a byword for the unexplained. This is the story of the Mary Celeste, the truth behind the world's greatest ghost ship. The Atlantic Ocean in winter is a vast and lonely place. On the afternoon of December 4th, 1872, the crew of the Canadian brigantine Dei Gratia, under the command of Captain David Morehouse, was sailing through the Azores halfway between Portugal and North America. The seas were calm, the weather fair. It was then that the lookout spotted another vessel about 6 miles distant. It was a two-masted brigantine like their own, but something was wrong. The ship was sailing erratically, yawing in the wind, its sails in slight disarray. It was moving as if no one was at the helm. Captain Morehouse, a seasoned seaman, grew concerned. He knew the ship. It was the Mary Celeste, an American vessel that had left New York City 8 days before his own ship, bound for Genoa, Italy. It should have already arrived at its destination. As the Dei Gratia drew closer, an eerie silence seemed to emanate from the other vessel. Morehouse hailed the ship multiple times. The only answer was the creak of the rigging and the sound of the waves lapping against the hull. There was no sign of life. A boarding party was dispatched. As First Mate Oliver DeVoe and his men climbed aboard the Mary Celeste, they stepped into one of the greatest mysteries in maritime history. The ship was deserted. A profound, unnerving silence hung over the deck. The single lifeboat was missing. The sails were set, but some were torn, and much of the rigging was damaged. But the ship itself was entirely seaworthy, and in remarkably good condition. They moved below deck, and the mystery deepened. The ship was wet, with over 3 feet of water in the hold. But the pumps were operational. In fact, one was still working. The cargo of 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol was completely intact. In the crew's quarters, their personal belongings, clothes, pipes, money, were untouched, as if they expected to return at any moment. In the captain's cabin, they found a scene of eerie domesticity. His wife's sewing machine had a piece of unfinished work still in it. Their daughter's toys were scattered on the bed. The captain's logbook lay open on his desk. The final entry was dated 10 days earlier, on the morning of November 25th. It recorded the ship's position near the Azores and noted nothing unusual. There was no mention of a storm, no hint of trouble, no final, desperate message. 10 people, Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife,
and a valuable cargo to face the uncertainty of the open ocean in a small, fragile lifeboat. The question that has haunted historians for 150 years is simple, yet profound. Why? To understand the mystery, we must first understand the man at its center. Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs was not a reckless man. He was a 37-year-old, highly respected and experienced mariner. A devout Christian and a teetotaler, he was known for his fairness and his competence. This was a man who would not abandon his ship lightly. The voyage was to be a special one. He was accompanied by his wife, Sarah, and their young daughter, Sophia. Their 7-year-old son, Arthur, was left behind to attend school, a decision that would ultimately save his life. The crew of 7 was also experienced and had good reputations. This was not a vessel plagued by discord. It was a well-run ship under the command of a capable captain with his family by his side. The Mary Celeste departed from New York on November 7, 1872. Her cargo was 1,701 barrels of raw American alcohol, destined for Italy to be used to fortify wine. For the first 2 weeks, the voyage was routine. Captain Briggs's log chronicled normal sailing conditions. The last entry on November 25th placed them just west of the Azores Islands. After that, the official record ends, and the realm of speculation begins. The crew of the Dei Gratia made a decision. The Mary Celeste was a valuable prize. They managed to get the ship back into sailing condition, and, splitting their crew, began the arduous journey of sailing both ships to Gibraltar to claim the salvage reward. When they arrived, they expected to be hailed as heroes. Instead, they were met with suspicion. The man in charge of the Vice Admiralty Court in Gibraltar was the Attorney General, Frederick Solly Flood. He was a man with a fervent belief that the sea was filled with criminals and rogues. He found the story of a perfectly abandoned ship unbelievable. He was convinced that a terrible crime had been committed. His primary theory was that the crew of the Dei Gratia, captained by his friend, Briggs's own acquaintance Morehouse, had stumbled upon the Mary Celeste, murdered everyone on board, and concocted the ghost ship story to claim the salvage money. He ordered the ship to be meticulously examined for signs of foul play. His men found what they believed were bloodstains on the deck and on the captain's sword, which was found in his cabin. However, subsequent testing proved it was not blood. They pointed to strange cuts on the ship's railing, suggesting they were made by an axe as evidence of a violent struggle. Yet the cuts were superficial. Solly Flood's investigation was a classic case of seeing what one wants to see. Despite his intense efforts and a lengthy court hearing, not a single piece of concrete evidence of foul play was ever found. The court
But it was only a fraction of the ship's value, and the reputations were forever tarnished by the unsubstantiated accusations. The official inquiry closed, but the public obsession with the ghost ship had just begun. With no official answer, theories began to flourish, ranging from the logical to the utterly fantastic. Let's examine the possibilities. Could it have been human violence? A mutiny seems highly unlikely. Captain Briggs was a fair commander, and the presence of his wife and child would have been a powerful deterrent to such an action. Furthermore, mutineers would likely have ransacked the ship or sailed it to a different port. They would not have abandoned it in the middle of the ocean. What about pirates? This is also improbable. The age of piracy in the Atlantic was largely over by 1872. More importantly, pirates would have plundered the ship's valuable cargo and the crew's personal effects, all of which were found untouched. This leads us to theories involving natural phenomena. Could a rogue wave or a sudden, violent squall have washed everyone overboard? This is possible, but it doesn't explain why they would have all been on deck at the same time. Nor does it align with the orderly state of the cabins below. The ship itself showed no signs of being overwhelmed by a massive wave. What about a sea monster, a giant squid that dragged the crew from the deck? This theory was popularized by fiction, most notably in an anonymous 1884 short story by a young Arthur Conan Doyle, which took massive liberties with the facts and cemented the more lurid, supernatural elements of the legend. In reality, there is zero evidence to support such a claim. This brings us to the most plausible and widely accepted theory today, one that hinges on the ship's cargo. The 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol. While industrial alcohol is not as volatile as gasoline, it can produce explosive vapor. 9 of the barrels in the cargo hold were found to be empty. These 9 were made of red oak, which is more porous than the white oak used for the other barrels. The theory posits that these barrels leaked, allowing alcohol fumes to build up in the confined space of the cargo hold. Captain Briggs, a cautious and responsible man, may have become concerned about the risk of an explosion. Perhaps he heard a rumbling sound from the hold as the vapor expanded, or perhaps he smelled the fumes. Fearing an imminent, catastrophic blast that could destroy the ship in an instant, he made a calculated decision. He ordered the crew to open the cargo hatches to ventilate the hold. He then ordered everyone to temporarily abandon ship as a precautionary measure. They would have launched the lifeboat, tied it to the mothership with a long tow line, and waited at a safe distance for the danger to pass. In this scenario, We can imagine the 10 souls in the small lifeboat, watching the Mary Celeste from a few hundred feet away. And then disaster struck. A sudden sex 0.05. Unexpected storm could have snapped the towline, or the wind could have picked up, filling the sails of the now lighter ship and causing it to sail away from them faster than they could row. The Mary Celeste, empty but sound, would have become a ghost ship, sailing on its own while its crew was left to perish in their small, open boat, lost to the vastness of the Atlantic. This theory elegantly explains the key facts: the missing lifeboat, the open cargo hatches, the lack of panic in the ship's log, the missing navigational instruments, which a good captain would take into an emergency boat, and the overall seaworthy condition of the ship. It replaces a supernatural mystery with a tragic story of a reasonable decision gone horribly wrong. And yet, it is only a theory. No proof will ever be found. The 10 people of the Mary Celeste were never seen again. Their bodies were never recovered. Their small lifeboat was never found. This absolute lack of evidence is what gives the story its enduring power. The Mary Celeste became a blank canvas for our fears of the sea, a place of sudden, inexplicable disappearance. The ship itself had a long and unlucky career after its discovery, eventually being deliberately wrecked by its final owner in an insurance scam. But its legend is immortal. It is the story of a perfectly good ship found sailing with no one aboard. A silent, floating tombstone for a crew that stepped off into the void, leaving behind the world's greatest maritime mystery.